The man accused of spying for Russia, Pavel Rubtsov, who claimed to be Spanish journalist Pablo Gonzalez, was allowed to see his case file just before leaving custody with the permission of Bodnar's prosecutor's office. As a spokesman for the National Prosecutor's Office told Rzeczpospolita, the suspect became acquainted with classified materials in the secret office of the Internal Security Agency, with the unclassified at the headquarters of the prosecutor's office. According to Dziennik, Rubtsov became acquainted with the investigation files in his case during the first 2 weeks of July. Incidentally, he was also able to learn how the mechanisms of the Internal Security Agency work, where he reviewed the secret files. It seems that Rubtsov's most effective intelligence work for Putin was done at the headquarters of the Internal Security Agency. On the secret protocols are the names of Internal Security Agency functionaries, testimonies, operational control materials and confessions, and many other tidbits. And spies have good memories. The prosecutor's office in charge of the spies case says it gave the file to the Russian agent as a matter of procedure, even though it could have denied it to protect state interests. The situation is so bizarre that I think even then there was no doubt that this gentleman was a Russian agent, because it was known that he was going to participate in an exchange with Russia organized by US services. Interestingly, 250,000 zlotys were spent just on translating the files provided to the Russian agent into Polish, Russian, and Spanish. We asked the parliamentarians of the Tusk coalition why the Russian agent was given access to the entire file of the espionage case. It seems the questions were quite uncomfortable. I watched your program recently, and this is some kind of... But I'm not asking about what you watched, I'm asking about Pavel Rubtsov. I wanted to ask you about Pavel Rubtsov's access to files, to the open files, but also to the secret files that he had access to in the secret office of the Internal Security Agency. The former head of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Administration of the Civic Platform wants to investigate Rubtsov's case only after he arrives in Moscow. There is a need for a white paper on this case, on Rubtsov's activities here in general during the years he worked as a Russian intelligence agent, on his contacts with journalists, with politicians, with state institutions, but also, at the end of the day, on how he was able to get these prosecution files, who gave him the permission to do so. This is something that does not need to be explained, because the file was made available to the Russian spy by the Bodnar prosecutor's office. A colonel of the Russian military intelligence service GRU, Rubtsov, who operated under the cover of the Spanish journalist Pablo Gonzalez, was arrested by the service at the end of February 2022, when its coordinator was Mariusz Kamiński. He had been in custody ever since. Bodnar's people, I want to emphasize once again, are giving information about the activities of the special services to a Russian agent, and this is not the first time. Under previous governments, they handed over the data of Belarusian dissident Aleś Białacki. Not long after Rubtsov became acquainted with the files of his case, on July 31st, he was released from custody, and on August 1st, he was greeted at the Moscow airport by the bloody Putin himself. This is an absolutely scandalous situation that exposes Poland to additional dangers. Poland, I remind you, is in the center of the information war waged by Russia, and we are facilitating such an operation with such decisions. On the occasion of the case, the, quote, excellent coordination on the line of the services managed by Donald Tusk and the prosecutor's office, led by Adam Bodnar, came to light. When planning and issuing the consent, the prosecutor did not know about the revocation of temporary detention, which took place on July 31st. Why was this man, who may have been a very important part, or perhaps a linchpin of a much wider and very high-reaching scheme, let out of Poland at all? With what knowledge can Rubtsov now enrich Russia? This is certainly a serious enrichment, and it is a scandalous thing. A thing for resignation. In many countries, it would be the resignation of the government. The issue of access to Rubtsov's secret information seems similar to what happened during the first Tusk government, when, during the reset of relations with Russia, the then military counterintelligence service drove another Russian agent around Polish military bases. In 2013, the military counterintelligence service signed an agreement written in Moscow with the FSB. They simply believe that this agreement is in effect, that, since they signed a document that they are to warn Russia of intelligence threats coming from the outside, well, they warn. If they catch a Russian spy, a GRU officer, and they have information that could be useful to him, they give it to him, because they signed the agreement, negotiated while drinking vodka and handing sabers to KGB men. And what does Donald Tusk say about all this? The government passed a bill on Tuesday that will allow the head of the Internal Security Agency, rather than the courts, to decide which online content is terrorist content. It will be removed upon the decision of the head of the Internal Security Agency. Radosław Jankiewicz, Republika.